Good morning, everyone. I'm so glad that I could spend a little bit of time with you today to just, again, offer some information, offer some insight, and answer a few questions that, again, I have been getting from you. I have been getting feedback as I pop in live and try and offer just, I guess, some wisdom. I have been a child trauma therapist for over 10 years. And I've been working with youth of all ages, from babies to 18, 19-year-olds. And it is something that I'm passionate about. And I found that when we entered into quarantine and anxiety started to rise, there were a lot of questions from just people sending me messages, from people in my life, and I wanted to share what I could. And I have been talking a lot about the word anxiety. I have been sharing about it. I have been talking about how to cope with it. And so some of the feedback and questions I have been getting are, how do I know if my kid is just nervous? And how do I know if they actually have full-blown anxiety? And what do I do with that? So I wanted to sort of just offer some ideas, offer some things to look out for, some signs, so that you can recognize what might be going on with your children. And again, a lot of these signs and things can be happening for children of all ages. I'm not just talking about our little ones. This can be with your adult children who are at home with you right now, 20, 21, 22-year-olds. They are still your babies, and they still can be struggling during a time like this. So let's talk a little bit about it. Anxiety is a hot word. It is thrown around everywhere. It has become sort of the typical diagnosis that children as well as adults are seeing right now. Even as grown-ups, we say, I have anxiety. He's got anxiety. We have anxiety about this. And it's become this like thing that we all suffer from. And yet it is very different than just being worried or just being nervous. So I wanted to shed some light on that, because really anxiety is not the same as being nervous. Now, feeling anxious can be synonymous with being nervous, but they're two different things. So let's talk about that. Okay, so when you're nervous and when your child is feeling nervous, it really is happening one time as a result of a certain situation. And it's usually in response to a typical or a typically occurring situation, like before they need to, be in a piano recital, or before they're going to be on stage, or before a big game, or a test, or they're going to meet somebody new, or things that would normally cause a human being to be nervous. And being nervous is not a bad thing. It's a positive response. It's your body reacting to something that could cause a little bit of fear, could cause a little bit of excitement, could cause a little bit of uncertainty. So feeling nervous is okay. And it's something that we should talk with our kids about, and letting them know it's okay to be nervous in those typically occurring situations. If you find that your child is nervous in situations that aren't typical, that's something to recognize. And we'll talk more about that. So also, nerves really can be coped with easily. Some deep breathing, some distraction, maybe some manipulation, using a stress ball. So if a child is using that sort of thing and coping well with the nerves, it's probably what it is. And nervous feelings can easily be recognized by the child himself. So if your child is saying, I feel nervous, I feel shaky, I feel sweaty, great, awesome. It is so cool when kids can recognize their emotions and verbalize them and say it out loud. And even if they don't have that emotional vocabulary yet, they can tell you how it feels in their body, and they are expressing their feelings to you in that way, and that should be praised and welcomed. So that is sort of what you're looking for when you're looking for nerves. And we've probably seen that in our kids before. Now, anxiety looks different. Anxiety really is a result of chronic stress or chronic complex trauma. A lot of the children that I work with have experienced trauma over and over and over and over and over again. And as a result of that, they can be anxious children. Okay? So if there is chronic stress, that means consistent, happening all the time sort of stress, then anxiety can result. It can also result from what we call a big T, which is big trauma. Big trauma examples might be the death of someone very important to them, or it could be abuse. It could be perhaps community violence. It could be a result of living through a pandemic. And I don't want you to be nervous about me saying that. I don't want you to go, oh my gosh, we're in a pandemic right now. My child has anxiety because of it. But there are lots of things that are happening right now in our world because of COVID-19. There are families that are in financial stress because of jobs being lost. There are families that have to move. There are families that aren't working. There are families who are working from home and children aren't getting the right attention. There are children who are really struggling with their academics because they aren't getting the one-on-one support that they normally would in school. So yes, living through a pandemic right now could be considered a big T, a big trauma in your child's life. And a big T can result in anxiety. Okay, anxiety also shows symptoms throughout the day and usually without explanation. Sometimes it's hard to pinpoint when your child may show their symptoms of anxiety. It could be right when they wake up, it could be before bedtime, it could be before mealtime, it could be before schoolwork. It's kind of just happening throughout the day and randomly, which is really frustrating as a parent because you're like, I thought we just dealt with this. How are we dealing with this again? And when it's happening like that, it's hard for you to help your child with it. So that can be another sign of anxiety. Also, your children are coping with it in a more challenging way. Perhaps they're not coping with it at all. Those usual strategies, the deep breathing, the distraction, the manipulation, those sort of easy techniques that we can use for relaxing our bodies aren't working for kids who are having anxiety. All right. Also, if you find that the symptoms are worsening with your child, they aren't getting better, that could be anxiety versus nerves. And last, anxiety can be debilitating for a child. It can cause them to not be able to go outside and play with friends. It can cause them to withdraw and perhaps lead into depression. There are lots of things that can happen to a child who has anxiety, and it can just really, really affect their development as they grow and their socialization and just their overall happiness. So anxiety, as you can see, is much more serious than just being nervous. So I don't want you to look at your children right now and say, my kid is anxious, my kid is developing anxiety, my kid is having something that's bigger. Then maybe they're just nervous because things are uncertain, things are tougher, and us as parents, we have more stress. So maybe they're nervous about that. They see it in us and they're worried about us, and that's okay. But if you are seeing some of these anxiety signs in your kid, what do you do? What do you do now? Okay, seeing it, what do I do? Well, the first thing is to recognize it and to be open-minded enough to recognize it. Don't sweep it under the rug. It is not going to ruin your family or, make things challenging for your child for life if they have anxiety. In fact, if you recognize it sooner and help them cope with it sooner, the better. So recognize it, be open to recognizing it, and then bring awareness of it throughout your entire family. Talk with your child about it, talk with your significant other, whoever else might live in your home, and really bring awareness to it. Really put it out there into the universe that this is something that might be going on, and seek support, actual support. I'm not talking about Google. Don't go Google how to deal with my kid who has anxiety, because you're going to get a whole bunch of things that may or may not work. But actually talk with a professional. Maybe therapy will work really well for your kid. Maybe just reaching out to someone like myself, sending me a message and having some tips that might help as well. Really, really seek out true support, and you may need to get your child evaluated. So if they need something more than just therapy or tips or strategies, then an evaluation can help them out as well. And then normalize it. It's okay. If you are suffering from anxiety, a child in your home is suffering from anxiety, it's okay. And it is very typical. It's happening a lot in homes, and maybe even more so now as we work our way through this pandemic. It's okay. Yes, you can cope with it. Yes, you can do a good job as a parent helping your child through it. And the first step is to just be aware. I hope that's helpful for you. Again, if you need anything, if you have any questions, if you're just curious, if you just want to talk things out, I'm open to it. Send me a message. I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and thank you for joining me. Bye.